Well, hello, everybody. Might as well jump in and show my face. And days like this are not easy to get out here and make a video, but we've faced worse before, or have we? Or is this one special? This sell off is record fast, record deep. We'll break down exactly why. In fact, the chart behind me shows we are back at 2021 levels, which is hard to believe. It's like we've gone full circle. And I do want to thank all the legends here for turning up. This so-called Bitcoin thing has been quite disappointing. Anyway, let's get into the story. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you to Moz in the chat too. Shawnee, TND, K8, and everybody else. This one's called Freefall. And it's, I don't know. We'll see if it's a happy story or not. Probably not. But let's jump in. Not financial advice. Doesn't matter. And Mustang Sally. I'm 58, female, Patreon. I've been following you since March 2021. And I've been here for the ups and downs. And thank you so much for saying that, because I always say investing is a blood sport. If it was easy, everybody would be a trillionaire. And it's not. And the best thing we can do is time markets as best we can, allocate as best we can, and be sort of positioned for the right trends at the right time. Anyway, let's get back to the Bitcoin story. First of all, they're whales. Whales are continuing to sell. Okay. They stopped about 4 weeks ago and they started again, which is really surprising because they were selling at 120K. They were selling at 110K, 100K, and a little bit at 90K, and then they stopped. But now, sub 80K, sub 75K, they continue to sell. Bitcoin price, as I speak, is 63K. We went as far as 62.2, which is a crazy number, but the OGs continue to dump. And I always say, you know, TA and everything else, what drives this market is the money flow into it. And I'm going to spend a second on this, talk about the ETF flows. A lot of us were so excited about the ETF flows because companies, organizations like BlackRock said, yeah, we're going to tell our investors to invest 2 to 4% of their allocations every week, every 2 weeks, kind of like a DCA into Bitcoin. But guess what? That has not transpired. Yes, we had a great first year. Then we had a great first 7-8 months. But the last 4 months have been red, and we've never had 4 red months down of drainage out of ETFs in a row. So you can throw all your TA out the window, et cetera, et cetera. If the money is not coming in to Bitcoin, and if the OGs are continue to sell and retail has no money, the price will not go up. So I've said that till all blue in the face, but just worth mentioning again. 4 red months is bad. People have lost faith. A lot of people are pointing at the Bitcoin Knots core debate where the Bitcoin team devs are fighting about JPEGs. Bitcoin should be a store of value. It's very simple. It shouldn't be encumbered with silly stuff. Anyhow, they should be focusing on quantum proofing it. And maybe some people believe that's giving the asset class a bad rep. Anyway, moving on. We also have crazy leverage flush. Again, cascading liquidations. Every time we drop a large amount, like a 3K swing down, it knocks people out and they're forced to sell and raise more money to cover. And this cascading keeps on happening. And we're now up about 2.5 billion over the last 30 hours, 2.1 billion in the last 24 hours. It is nasty. 1.15 billion of that from Bitcoin, $500 million out of Ethereum. XRP had a chunk too. So it has just been all around really, really brutal out there. But I'm going to spend some time looking at some charts to see what we can tell. First of all, we've had 5 red months. And the important piece kind of this chart is Bitcoin has fallen 50% in less than 120 days. In the last bear market where we had terrible things happen, like FTX and all the scams and everything else, it took 180 days. It took half a year to fall 50%. We have fallen way faster this time around, which is interesting. Now, let's look at another chart. This is the 200-day moving average for Bitcoin. It's 103K. That gives you an idea of how fast we've fallen. 200-day moving average is north of 100,000. And we're now floating around 62,000, 63 grand. It is just literally fallen out of bed. The deviation from the 200-day is like nothing I've ever seen on a Bitcoin chart. And we are back at 2021 levels. We have round tripped it, which is stunning. The trend turned exactly at 105K. You can see here on the chart. And since then, it's been down only. And everybody now realizes, yep, it's a bear market. Once we get to the 40% off, that's confirmation. The downturn is in bear territory. And now we're at 50% off. So it is nasty. But the speed at which it happened, especially considering everybody was pinning their hopes and dreams to digital asset treasury companies and ETFs and all that crap. Nothing. Sailor can't even keep the thing afloat. Trend turned not at 105, 106K is when it turned here. And you can see the duration of the typical historic bear markets of the orange parts. We had the 2011, then the 2015, etc., etc. The question is, how long will this last? Now, because typically in markets, when you fall fast, the pain is over fast. Question is, how much more can it fall? And we'll try and address that in today's video. Also, we are the most oversold since 2022. I'm going to move my camera up here. And that has not, again, this is the mean reversion for Bitcoin. And again, most oversold since the last bear market. And it happened fast. Again, this thing fell out of bed. The other thing that I would like to show you here is the line. Well, we'll come to that in a second. This is another verification of the most oversold ever. This is the relative strength index. It's a popular trading indicator. It's now at 17. Only the bear market bottom of 2018 and 2020, the C19 crash, had this level. So it's the third most oversold ever in the history of Bitcoin. It's ugly, but the speed at which it happened is also very ugly. Now, another view of where we are. We're back in that 65K box. We breached 65K back in, I think it was May 2021. And then again, November 2021, the two peaks of the last bull market. We never had a second peak this time around. We just had kind of maybe a miniature one when we broke 100K. By the way, I remember vividly the time we both broke 100K. I think it was December 2024. And I had to drink that nasty stuff called whiskey. Never again. Anyhow, we're back in the 65K box. One question people would have that I would have is, could this become a support level? And the answer is, I don't think so, because if there is no bid, if nobody is stepping in to buy, there is no support. Price is made at the margin and there's no bid. And that's the most important thing. Zero bid. OGs are selling again. Bhutan is selling to cover their mining costs. We'll get to the miners in a second. Also, another view of the world, and I shared this the other day. This is the unrealized profit has now spiked above 30%. 30% of people that hold Bitcoin are in loss right now, which is staggering to think. Anybody who's been in Bitcoin since before 2020, their cost basis is very low. 3K, 10K, 12K, 9K, etc. But now 30% of all Bitcoin holders are in loss. Now, when we compare this to historic bear markets, it can go as high as 60% in loss. We don't know what's going to happen next, but this chart will tell you that there could be more pain to come, despite the fact that we're already 50% off. And people said as well, with the ETFs, there'll be reduced drawdowns, but the problem is the ETFs aren't buying. So again, no good news here. And another interesting shout out to BTC Long 2 from Julio Moreno. A lot of people were focused on liquidity, but the wrong liquidity. They're focused on global M2 liquidity. Of course, there was no correlation there. That fell apart too, like all the other correlations that we had for Bitcoin. Flush it down the toilet. But this one is something that we haven't seen for a very, very long time. The market cap of Tether USDT has contracted. That has never happened, at least as far as I can recall in my history. So that's bad. So that is the real liquidity trap. Stable coins are the fuel that fuels crypto. When these things shrink, everything shrinks. This could be a very strong leading indicator, which also is a scary indicator right now. We need this thing to expand. And stable coins are expanding, but not Tether. Your circle is, last time I checked. Also, I don't know if this had anything to do with the scare, but Scott Bessent, he's the Treasury Secretary, he said, "We reject government bailout authority and will not intervene with a strategic Bitcoin reserve." Now, people were confused by that. They thought, oh, maybe there'd be a buyer of last resort, the US government step in and buy cheap Bitcoin, etc. No, they have no legal authority to do so, have no intention to do so. They will not be bailing out Bitcoin investors or stabilize crypto markets. They don't give a toss, my friends. They don't give a toss. Maybe just order the banks to buy Bitcoin or the JP Morgans of the world. Who knows? But that's not going to happen either. I never thought it was going to happen, but somehow some people pinned their hopes and dreams on that as well. Now, let's talk about some other bad news. First of all, the cost to mine a Bitcoin is now $92,000 with the price of Bitcoin at 63K. Anybody who's got a miner plugged in right now is losing. So if you are sucking up, $92,000 of cost to mine one Bitcoin and the price of 63K, well, you're nearly taking a 30K hit in the shorts. That is not good. So the miners are going to get smashed this season unless the price recovers or unless a lot of miners unplug, which they will, and they probably are, and they probably have done so already because it's not profitable to mine. Anybody who is at home here mining, unplug that machine right now, save your power. You're not going to make any money unless you get the lucky hit of mining a couple of Bitcoin, but that's like winning a lottery ticket. Anyhow, that is pretty ugly. Expect the hash rate to drop, which means the security of the network will drop, which also will alarm folks. I mean, I'm trying to paint I can't paint a rosy picture because I'm not finding any roses. But let's talk for a second about the question that I get all the time. Where is the floor? I wish I knew. I don't know. The problem is there's no bid. Price is at the margin. There is no bid whatsoever. But historically, we should have stayed above the 70K level. 70K should have been a price support because that's the price before the election. We broke through that. Dead. Now we're down around 63K. And the 200-week moving average, which historically, if you look at the history of Bitcoin here on this chart, historically, Bitcoin kind of bounces off it. It does pierce through it a few times. It did in 2022. It could again this time, but that price is $58,000. We are $5,000 away from that 200-week moving average, which long-term has been support. But again, all history no longer matters because nothing is repeating. Everything is different this time. Now, this is kind of like a little bit of a hopium slide out of China. This is from Wei Zhao. And they said this is the oldest and most powerful chart in crypto history. I'd argue with that, but it's the Bitcoin gold chart. And we know gold has been on a complete rampage. And gold is different. Bitcoin has been somewhat correlated as a risk asset like with the NASDAQ, etc. But anyway, sharing this chart, we'll see if it does bounce. Not sure it will. But if you look at the price, that's 17. That's the amount of ounces of gold per Bitcoin. And it's been on an increase ever since Bitcoin began. And every single time since 2017, 2021, 2024, and even going back before that, it always bounced off this ascending line. The question is, are we going to break through 17? Or every single time that it did bounce off this line, it was the beginning of a new bull market. I don't know. A lot of experts, so-called experts, were believing that 2026 would be the 5th year of the cycle and it would be very bullish. We don't know. We don't know where any of this is going. And I wish I had more positive tidings, but I do not. It's not fun being up here, kicking the teeth, as I call it. Shout out to JJ, Ocean JJ. Everyone thinks they have diamond hands until they get punched in the face with the bear market. It has been a nasty, nasty drawdown. No doubt about that, everybody. Very ugly out there. The speed at which this has happened caught a lot of people off guard, offside. The question is, what do you do now? Hope there is a support at the 200-week moving average of 58K, or hope there's a support at the 17 ounces of gold per Bitcoin, or could we go all the way back to where we came from and the way back to 20K, 15K? I don't know. We'll see. It's all uglies out there, and I just want to thank everybody for the support too. I must say it's impressive to see everybody here. Clint Alexander, Sir Winston, DBF 430, Buckhorn, Mostly Harmless, GQ Trader, Martello, Cybertruck Crypto, Radrich, Bluegrass, Piper, Soulstrider, Mr. Stefano, Swiss Guy Ritchie, Kamikars Creations, long time to see, buddy. Dreams, Aero Ron, Andy Pandy, I'm Colt, and Dog 1A. Let's try figure out what happens next. And have that powder dry. Dry powder has been key. Still waiting myself to deploy because I don't see, it's okay to nibble here, but we don't know where the bottom is. We really don't. And we don't even know, in all frankness, there's no bid on Bitcoin that was promised by the ETFs from TradFi. Until that returns, we are going to suffer, especially as the long-term holders keep selling. Thank you all for coming. Hang in there. See you tomorrow for Friday Fire. Hopefully, historically, Friday is a better day. Wednesday, Thursday are the slumpy days for the week. Let's see if that continues. And Friday is a day of recovery. Fingers crossed. Thanks all. Have a good night.